Each state has their own delegation that goes to represent them in the DNC. And California used to have the primary in June. And as an incentive, the DNC gives states that go later in the primary calendar extra delegates because they don't want to front load the primary. We have Iowa, New Hampshire, Nevada, and South Carolina. They're the first. But if you go up, if you move your primary up, you get penalized, which is what California did. We moved from June to March, and we were penalized 10% of our total state delegation.
Oh, really?
Yes.
I did not hear about that part.
So our delegation is smaller. Now there's 4 basic types of delegates. There's the automatic delegates, what the DNC calls them. Normal people, we all colloquially call them the super delegates. If a candidate does not receive 50% plus 1 at the convention, then the super delegates get to vote.
I see. So that would be considered like a second round if that needed to happen.
Or third round, and we've gone. The different conventions have gone certain, subsequently 20, 30, 40 ballots.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, I think Abraham Lincoln was nominated something like on the 40th ballot or something like that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow. Of course, that was the Republican Party, which was they were more progressive at that time than the Republican Party obviously is now.
State of California has a 15% threshold. So,
which means?
So a candidate would need to receive 15% either in the district to get district delegates or 15% statewide to get at-large and pleo delegates. So let's say you have a candidate and they only get 14% in statewide and they get no more than 14% in any of the districts. They're entitled to 0 delegates.
Wow. Well, so if they have to have at least 15%.
At least 15.
So how would they get, let's say, more than 1 delegate in a district if there were, let's say, 10 delegates?
So if there's 10 delegates available, what you would look at is the district results. So it depends on, in each district, how many candidates have reached that 15% threshold. So let's say, for example, Joe Biden has 30% of the overall total, but only, let's say, for the sake of simplicity, let's say that Joe Biden had 30% and then Bernie Sanders had 25% and then Harris had 20%. So actually, so it's at 30, 25, 20, right? So that's 55, that's 75 total. So Joe Biden is entitled to 30% of that 75%. You don't count the candidates that did not reach that 15% threshold.
Oh, wow. So that would eliminate most of the candidates right there just by not getting that 50%, 15% threshold.
Right. And so what's interesting too is we're going to have these, by the time California rolls around, it's going to be 2 months after Iowa, after New Hampshire, there's going to be candidates that have dropped out.
Right.
But because we have mail-in ballots dropping around the same time of the Iowa caucuses, there could be people voting for candidates. They put in their ballot in the mail, then they're voting for a candidate that's not going to reach the 15% threshold. Well, there's different ways to do the math, but yeah, each district we're looking at how much percent has each candidate received of those who reached the 15% threshold, and then once you determine that, actually you get that number, and then you multiply that out by the number of delegates available.
So you're assuming that there may only be 4 candidates.
Well, theoretically, possibly, to reach that 15% threshold.
Right.
I have a delegate calculator that I sent you, and that is based actually on a recent California poll.
Oh.
So it's not just numbers I just made up.
Oh.
I just based it, if that poll was accurate and those were the results, that's actually what it would look like.
Oh, wow. So do you know the demographics of the people in that poll?
I do not.
Yeah. See, that's the thing. They never tell you when they have polls. They don't tell you usually who the demographics are. What that consists of. I know there was a poll. I think it was done by an organization called Emerson or something like that, and I do believe it included the demographics, and it was a diversity of people and ages, and that's the first time I'd seen a poll, at least in this election cycle so far, where they released the demographics a little more specifically. And when you have a diverse demographic that you're polling, guess who is far ahead? It's Bernie Sanders. So that's why I wonder, what demographics are they using when they say Joe Biden has the 5 or 10% lead over Bernie. But it always seems to show that it is Biden-Bernie, right? Most of the polls that they release.
And that's, I think, one of the problems with polls is they could be a self-fulfilling prophecy.
That's right.
So you can have a lot of polls showing Joe Biden as the top vote getter, and then it gets into people's mind, well, we got to elect Joe Biden because he's the one who's going to take on Trump.
Exactly.
But the poll's based on, voters over 65 years old.
That's right. Or let's say if it's CNN doing the poll, the average viewer of CNN is 60-something years old. So that's another thing they don't talk about. And why people limit themselves, to this, to just these mainstream media networks, when their average viewers are like retirement age or even older, like 65 or older, and yet they have such a stronghold. I should say the big money in the political system. They own the media. These media companies, they have such a stronghold on the American public, particularly Middle America. That they don't really represent the whole of America. So, what's interesting about this election that we have right now is that, unlike the last election, I have a feeling there's going to be a lot more younger people and a lot more people of color that are going to be voting because they saw what happened last time, right? And they don't want a repeat of what happened last time. So CNN or MSNBC or even Fox, they're not necessarily going to report that because they're still going to rely on their viewership, the people that tend to go out and vote, which are older, from the way it has been up to this point, right? So this election could be completely different, or it could be have a similar outcome, but just using different strategies to get there, because this is a very well-oiled machine we're talking about here, and our political system is technically corrupt, right? Because we actually have a Supreme Court law that is called Citizens United. So, like if it was another country, it would be totally against the law, to have lobbying or, to have money in the political system like that.
Well, there was a lawsuit with the DNC where basically they argued in court that we don't need to provide fair elections.
Wow. That's true. I mean, and well, there's been so many, we already know what happened in the outcome last time. I mean, obviously there were emails that were leaked. And clearly, I saw some of them, and they were marginalizing of Bernie Sanders and Cornel West, who he had picked for for the platform committee. And I said, "Wow!" And that's only a small tip of the iceberg of the emails. And of course, then obviously the DNC couldn't deny it, so that's why Debbie Wasserman Schultz stepped down, right? So and then there was the super delegates that were used, obviously, to benefit Clinton, particularly in those places where Bernie won the majority of the popular vote in the primaries. And in the case of West Virginia, he won all 55 counties. And then there was a Bernie delegate standing behind the person answering the roll call at the convention who had a sign say Bernie won all 55 counties, while they're reading the roll call to the chairman that Hillary Clinton got something like 35 of the votes, for the whole state, and then Bernie got 15. So it was things like that that exposed the fact that something was going on there, So we got Hillary Clinton. Many people feel, because that's how the DNCs decided to run their club.
I think back in 2012, there actually was a candidate in prison from West Virginia, and he was entitled to some delegates too. And there was another protest candidate over in Louisiana, and I don't believe they seated those delegates for the 2012 DNC.